Hello, people of Earth. Welcome to another Parallel Perception podcast with Luhan Matus. We have some guests here today. Blaine, my right hand guy, he's always here. We appreciate you, Blaine. And we have Simba Stenquist from Thailand. Well, not originally, as you might be able to tell from his name. He's with a company called Living with the Spirit. Yeah, we're all friends here, and we're hoping to get into some wild stuff. I'm going to kick it off today. Just change the view here. Here we go. Okay, Luhan, you ready for this one? I was listening to a podcast with Sam Harris, and he's actually spoken about this a few times. And he's a very smart guy. I definitely appreciate some of his insights and perspectives on things. This one kind of froze me a little bit. He was talking about free will, and that he believes that it is a myth. That not only is it a myth, but it is so much of an illusion that he doesn't even accept that it's worth discussing. and to kind of summarize his argument for this, let's see if I can do this. I don't know how well I'm going to do this, but he talks about it in terms of how thoughts seem to arrive. That the seeming of things is sort of his proof and his basis for his belief that there's no such thing as free will. And what he says is that because thoughts just arrive, we don't know where they come from. We can't see kind of the step-by-step process of how thoughts formulate and how we decide to make decisions, essentially. That because they seem to arrive instantaneously, that we must be some kind of automaton, that whoever we are, wherever we were born, whatever economic status, all of the things that contribute to our beingness and our who-ness, they sort of dictate our actions and our outcomes, and there's nothing that we could do about it. That if you could rewind scenarios and go back in time a million times, a billion times, that we would always do exactly the same thing. So maybe it's also an argument against like the multiverse, or something like that. Can you speak to whether or not Sam's right and there's no such thing as free will, or what free will is, and how it applies to the human condition?
Well, it's not so simple. Free will and determinism are basically intertwined. You have free will to express the deterministic characteristics of your reality, and those deterministic values then structure what you're free to, how you're free to express. So free will is basically the freedom between all human beings to express what they've received in terms of the deterministic nature of the universe, and harmonizing with that factor. If we don't harmonize with the deterministic nature of our reality, then we don't have free will. We end up fighting and having discordance. So if free will has got to do with harmonizing with the deterministic nature of our universe, and that deterministic nature is affected by our consciousness. The double split experiment. That's all I need to say. So the free will of our universe determines the characteristics of our effect upon it. So there is the free will of the universe to allow itself to be expressed within via our consciousness. So the free will of the universe is to take in our perspective, and the deterministic nature of our hardened principle is to realize that we've got to harmonize with this free will, because the universe is molded by our perception, and then our perception is molded by the fact that we have to harmonize. So they're intertwined. So you can't say one without the other. So my free will, your determinism is to say, well, I'm determined to communicate this, and then my free will is to communicate from how I receive this. So that the deterministic nature of how I receive this has to do with my level of consciousness in comparison to your level of consciousness. So determinism then gives a very, very vital sign that we have to have free will to deal with the deterministic nature of our hardened viewpoints, and then we have those hardened viewpoints softened down to become harmonized with what needs to be harmonized within the universal ebbs and flows. Once we become a interstellar community, we'll discover this immediately. I mean, if you go into the ocean and you swim around with a shark, you've really got to be expected to be eaten if you're hungry. So you got free will not to go in there, or you can go in there and discover that you're going to be destroyed. So it's so harmony is basically looking at the deterministic nature of reality, but then the deterministic nature of reality will only respond to our perception anyway. So you see many monks that walk with tigers, wild tigers, and because they're calm enough not to attract the violent essence of that particular tiger, the tiger won't attack them. So it's all about vibration, really. And then the deterministic nature of that vibration will challenge your capacity to be empty of your own perspective, which is free will.
This sounds like biblical. that it's it's like the idea that God wants something for you, but you have to choose it, or something like that. Like there's a path for you to walk that empowers you or enables you to find your maximum potential, or something like that. But in order to do that, you sort of have to give yourself over to the higher realm of God or consciousness or fate or something like that. Is that right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you put a scorpion in front of you, you put your finger on the scorpion, the deterministic nature of that particular action, you get stung.
Yeah.
So your free will is not to put your finger on that. But the free will of not putting your finger on that is to harmonize with something that doesn't understand your perspective. It only understands its own essential nature. It'll sting you if you get close to it, because then you harmonize with it. You realize it can't realize anything beyond its sting. And like the old story with the monkey going from an island, and the scorpion asks, "Can I travel on your back? I promise I won't sting you." Halfway through the journey, the scorpion stings the monkey, and the monkey says, "Why?" And the scorpion says, "My nature, just my nature. I'm going to die too, and I'm taking you with me, whether you like it or not." And there's no discernment about being stung and being paralyzed by that. So the nature of the universe gives us free will to understand that things won't cooperate or things will cooperate, and then we learn to harmonize in between all those lines of vibration or those perspectives. So even if we meet somebody from maybe another galaxy, you'll understand that you don't get the same form of communication. So then your nature is then challenged to drop exactly who you are. And if you're a scorpion, you have to drop exactly who you are to understand that all they're doing is asking to travel with us, don't sting. And what does the sting represent? It means a discordant nature that doesn't understand the beauty and the solid trust of another being to say, well, it's about time we trust you, so we'll take you somewhere else with us, and don't disrupt. And we're at the stage where we're pulling our sting away from circumstances to actually correspond with something higher than what we are.
So is it like the choices that you can make in terms of free will are not necessarily hierarchical, but what choices you'll be afforded are related to where you're at on your journey in terms of your ability to even understand or perceive what those might be? Is it something like that? Like the farther up the mountain you go, the more agency or autonomy you might have in terms of the harmony of the universe that you can express through you?
The higher you go up to the mountain, the harder your challenge becomes to communicate what you've achieved. And maybe what you've achieved is not to do what everybody else is doing. And then to communicate with individuals that don't understand you're not doing what they're doing, you're challenging what they're doing by showing that you're not doing it, by revealing it's being done. And that's where our problem is as a humanity. We've got to listen to this. To those who don't get involved and don't entangle in an involvement. And if we understand this as a humanity, we'll make great leaps and bounds. then that's free will. That's free will to take on somebody's perspective and then express that as free will. Yet it's the deterministic nature of the person that says my free will to put this upon you. Very interesting subject.
Guys, jump in anytime, but how does something like the archetypal figures of good and evil factor into that? You have figures like Satan, or the destroyers or the destructors that cause harm and disruption and create the challenges that we essentially need to overcome in our lives. Are they playing their part in harmony with the universe, or is that what discordance is?
You're talking about this like a human being. Good and evil, it exists it's very prominent on our planet because we trained each other to respond to this, and this only to be the script that we're reading. There's something way beyond our human perspective, because we're caught within the location of what we feel is good and evil. Is there really good and evil? Or is there just understanding that you just don't step somewhere because it's not viable for your condition as an entity to you can be destroyed if you go too far, and we've gone too far. So now we started to destroy each other, and then we call it good and evil. It's just human beings being stupid. The final word.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah. I guess it's a big subject and a confusing one too.
I mean, no, it's not confusing, David. I mean, imagine if you put yourself in 10,000 or 10,000 millennia, you put yourself behind yourself in 10,000 years, but you're still here because time-space continuum doesn't exist. So what if you knew more from your past, and then you put that behind you as an avatar for your present moment? Would you exist?
If I put the avatar of my past behind me.
No, your avatar, say you had an avatar in a timeline that was maybe 500 years ago, and you've got an avatar in the future in 10 million years. You put either one of them behind you, you won't really understand what you understand, but if you put it behind you, then it'll wipe you. And you won't respond in a way that you expect because you're aware of something that is so totally different to what you really believe, because you're not the same person anymore. It's the same way if you look from the top of a mountain. This is a Taoist thing. Top of the mountain, you see someone on their journey, they can't see you, but you can see them from the top of the mountain. So if you ask them to say, well, be aware that you've arrived because I can see you. But they don't know they've arrived because they can't see you, and they don't understand the concept of unification. They've already arrived because you're in the spot that they're looking for. But they don't know that you're looking upon them. And they're totally engrossed within their journey. So we can put that person that we don't know is looking down on us on our journey, we pop that behind ourselves and we wipe ourselves completely, because we have no perspective, because we don't understand where we are in the future. If we don't understand where we are in the future, then the prospect of this present moment has a great capacity to change. But if we put ourselves or our feelings as our prominent avatar, it'll work on us. Because it's something that we're familiar with. We've got to assign ourselves to something which is unfamiliar. And you know what this is, because you get wiped. I get wiped. I was teaching Dragon's Tears on Saturday. I was just totally wiped. I had to ask everybody, did I show everything properly, because I wasn't there. So what is it that wipes a person's reality from their very view that everybody else is watching you? And you've been wiped, Simba's been wiped, everybody gets wiped. So there's a very, very particular message inside of that, because you don't exist, because you're doing exactly what you're meant to do in that moment. So because you're doing exactly what you're meant to do, you disappear. But when you do something you don't really want to do, you appear very strongly. So we got to stop doing what we don't want to do and find out what we really need to do so we can disappear. and become really relevant because we're not really there. Contradiction. And if we're not really there, then the other person can assign themselves through your body to speak on their behalf, and on your behalf you'll speak for them as well, and for yourself simultaneously, because that personality becomes your prime objective. But if your personality is your prime objective, then how can that person possibly pop inside of you if you're not disappeared? Because they're asking you when they want therapy, please disappear me because I can't handle this anymore. And nobody's really listening to this. Please disappear me because I don't like what's happening. Please help. Don't you have to disappear to accommodate that person?
Yeah. Is that what something, there was a biblical passage about that Jesus, I'm so bad at these quotes, so hopefully everybody will forgive me for not remembering the Bible exactly from many years ago, but it's something to the effect of, in order to become the highest among men, you have to become the lowest among men. And then the gesture that Jesus does is like washing the feet of the people that came to worship him, or something like that. Is that what that means?
To become somebody, you have to become nobody. Yet how can nobody be somebody? It's a conundrum which is highly enlightening. To become nobody, you actually become somebody when you're nobody. But when you consider you somebody, nobody disappears. Then you're in trouble.
Guys.
Simba. No, holy crap.
I've heard this question before, the original question, if we have free will or if that's just an illusion or not. And for me, I really look at it as a level of consciousness. What are we looking at? So many times it's a factor of, okay, we are all just in this gray little apparatus up here that we call brain. That's where everything comes from. And I think that's basically maybe part of the problem sometimes when you ask a question like that we don't allow ourselves to go outside of who we are, almost like, not to try to understand exactly what you said, Luan, but what I take away from it was, if you think you are someone, if you think this is the way it is, I have a method, I have a theory, this is the way it is, how would you ever discover something that's outside of it? I already decided this is the way it is. How can I expand? How can I see something beyond it? And I think
you're exactly right, Simba. But just say you're carving, you're a master carver of wood. When you're carving the wood, somebody comes to speak to you, you're still a master carver of wood, and you stop carving what you're doing to take notice of who comes. You're still a master carver of wood, but because you've carved with so much diligence, so much devotion, then you apply that devotion to somebody else. You disappear because you have to acquaint yourself with a new situation, and they're starting to carve you into a shape, and then the wood carver says, okay, is that really my shape?
It's eerie when you freeze like that, Luan. I feel like it shouldn't be possible to be that still.
But anyway, I'm terrible, aren't I, Simba?
Terrible. No, it's really good, and I mean, I like what you said also, the higher up the mountain you come, the harder it becomes to explain it to someone. It doesn't have to do with your better or worse or hierarchy. It's just awareness. I think ultimately that's one of the crucial points. If you look at awareness, the more awareness you have, you become more aware of your perception of what consciousness is as well. And if your perception of consciousness it's just a chemical reaction within my body that creates X, Y, and Z, that's where you will operate from. And if you allow yourself to see something more than that, I think your understanding will start to change. That was my journey, right? I'm not trying to impose on anyone, but I've read these books too, and and that's kind of what started me on this journey. It's like, is there really something like such a thing as free will? And I definitely think it is. Just the fact that you can ask the question, for me, implies that there is a free will. Why would you ask?
Yeah, but then somebody will say, well, the deterministic nature of your question was determined by the fact that you have to ask it. So there's no free will because you've already designed it as a question. So you're not free. I'm contradicting myself, tying everything up in knots. But I mean, I believe they're just intertwined. I mean, really.
Yeah, I can't see the point of anything if we're just programs that are playing out the story that's been written for us. That doesn't make any sense to me. It essentially puts it into the frame of like a movie or something that you can just watch and nothing new happens, and there's no surprises, and every time you watch it it's exactly the same, and what's the point of that? Like, I suppose it would be more about who's watching the film and what they get from it. But if there's no free will, then what the hell are we doing? We're just automatons, and we're not in charge, and nothing that we realize belongs to us, and that's just a strange way to operate. And also, one of the things that I resist when I'm listening to Sam Harris's description of this, there's two things. One is that he's so sure that his conception of his idea around this is just true, and there's to the point that it's not even worth debating anymore. He seems irritated every time the question comes up. So if there's nothing else to learn, like that just seems to be something wrong with that picture for me. But the other difficulty that I have, I'm searching now. I keep getting wiped in this conversation in particular, that I don't know where I'm going. Okay, hold on. Anybody else want to jump in and save me for a second while I find it?
Could even what is seen as contradictions between determinism and free will be in part a constraint of the software which we inherit, whether that be language or even how exchanges are usually framed between two people? Like, I think that perhaps a unique style of relay can develop from maybe learning a different language, or if you knew a language like Sanskrit, perhaps you'd have this level of expansion and understanding of these concepts that just can't quite be touched with English. Does that feel relevant, Luhan?
Well, everything's calligraphy. Everything is calligraphy. Everything you say crystallizes inside of my body. So the language, whether it's a sacred language or not, it just depends on whether you're sacred. So they say that obviously Sanskrit is more pure because it's a pure tonal language that is in harmony with the universe, so that you're tonally in harmony, and your vibration recrystallizes your system. But if you listen to your own tonality as you speak with your heart essence, you've done exactly the same thing, because you're crystallizing your reality through the tonality of your voice, and that crystallization is formulated at that particular point. And as soon as you let go of that crystallization, then you're reformulated by another person's awareness, so you're malleable. The reality is malleable. So we're not realizing we're shape-shifting or we're changelings. So the reason that they have mantras and calligraphy in terms of the Chinese language and also Sanskrit is to recrystallize yourself and then go out and be changed, the crystalline structure of your body to be changed, so you can realize the differentiation between the reality that you get absorbed in as a practitioner and the reality you get absorbed in when you're around people who don't practice, or they say they practice but don't fully take it on board. So it's just a learning thing to give a different reference of crystallization. So we're doing this as householders. We're doing a better job than a yogi that's in a cave, because he's not being restructured. He's not learning from his experiences. He's just going into emptiness. And every single yogi that goes into a cave comes out to express what he's discovered in his quietude, for that quietude to be challenged by being recrystallized, and then he gives voice to what he's learned from not being where the person is that's giving him the information, which is the question, why do I exist? So then that can be answered via the fact that he's absorbed some magic and then can translate it through the open vessel of his attunement, of his heart awareness, or just the body reassembling itself in an appropriate answer to the question asked. That's what gurus are, plain and simple. And we're all doing this, but the guru is clear about where he's landed in terms of, I'm not going to be affected by this because I found something that's not affected. Yet this non-affected state can be assume the consciousness of somebody else through the voice of the teacher. But that teacher has to stay very, very pure for that to continue occurring. The recrystallization of awareness. What do you think, Simba? You're looking at me sideways there.
Well, we had that discussion many times, right? You know, the authentic communication, when you, like we did in a previous podcast here, when we were talking about speaking from your heart and not from your head, then it's almost like the communication becomes the teacher. And that's kind of what I picked up. You said the guru sits in quiet, and then he comes out to society, and all the projection and the cognitive dissonance from other people starts to affect you. And then your practice becomes, how do I stay in this quietude when I'm not just in my cave and can focus on nothing? How can I find a quietude in that? So I think the true communication really is the teacher in this case.
But also too, the communication that comes about from a yogi being in a state of retreat is that he's not doing what every other human being does, and then when he comes back to humanity, he notices what everyone's doing in comparison to what he doesn't do anymore. So then he gives voice to what's being done because he hasn't done it anymore. So then he's being rewired back into society with still the emphasis of all those years of not being involved. And then he'll say, well, what is this crap going on here? I've got to answer all these questions because there's we're all doing something which is not really necessary. What's necessary is something other than what the yogi is experiencing in quietude. Quietude then is challenged to embrace the external reality, like it's basically Shiva, that which is not.
It's like traveling, right? You come to a new culture and you just become aware of everything because you are not doing that. Like that's how it was for me coming to Asia. I was like, why is everyone doing this? And they're like, what do you mean? You don't see it because you're immersed in it, right? But when you come out of it and then you come back into it, then you start to see the little subtle nuances and details, and okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I had a 10-year retreat. Misper and I retreated for 10 years. We had no contact with anybody. We had four visitors, 2 were repeats in that 10-year period. In that 10-year period, I learned more about human beings than being immersed with them. Because when I came back out, I got shock after shock after shock. And then asking the question, no, this can't be true. What's going on here? You know? And it's the same being in another, like you said, Simba, being coming from a different origin, you begin to notice what people are doing. And it's a really great thing what's going on in the world at the moment, that boundaries are being broken and cultures are being noticed by another culture. And then it breaks down your cultural edifice. Yeah, it's a really very, very interesting thing being a human being. But the Taoists say that's a curse. Life is interesting. Yeah.
Are we a unique situation of a species in terms of our relationship and the intertwining of determinism and free will? Are there entities that just operate inside of determinism and like it was never a question? Because it seems like, go ahead.
Yeah, no. Without going into the crazy basket, what if I would say you would meet another culture from another planetary system, and from that planetary system they communicated in an entirely different way, and you were brought into a state of null and void. Even if you got on the craft with them, you cannot even remember traveling on the craft because the craft is self-aware. And when you're dropped, then you've learned something that you can't remember. You have to assume responsibility for what you've learned, but you have to deconstruct your reality in terms of what the premise or the boundaries that have been given to you, and you break through those boundaries by realizing that we're not communicating in the way that the visitors are communicating with the people they're communicating with. Yeah. So then you receive non-verbal information as confirmation of what the other being is, and that's what we need to learn. Is the non-verbal communication should be realized by us as the dictum of what needs to be done by somebody else's attention upon you, instead of you saying, this is what I want to happen for me. It's the other way around, and we've been coerced to actually be the opposite of what we're really meant to be, and it's a universal law, really, that you sustain other people's or other beings' awareness, and their living premise of their needs and their wants are automatically fulfilled, because you can feel that other person, their needs and their wants, because you're in a universal harmonious law. You're in harmony with universal law. So I don't want to leave you when somebody drops somebody off on this planet. They're not saying that. And I'm saying, please don't leave me. They're not saying that. I say, please don't leave me. They're saying, I don't want to leave you. So the interpretation of our cognitive system even tricks us into even believing, please don't leave me, because it's not nice. But that message was relayed, and we don't want to leave you was the message. It was the totally opposite. So then to comprehend what the communication was is a very big deal for a human being, because we don't want to leave you is a very, very defined statement, but we've got no choice. I don't know whether this is whether you guys are comprehending.
I don't know.
Because the same thing would happen is say if Simba was saying that I've had this experience in my past, then the responsibility of another human being is not to replicate that, but to say that won't ever happen again because I've got your back. And if I do that, then I've broken a certain law, very, very vital law for human beings to understand. And vice versa, it has to be for everybody. So then it becomes pure communion in terms of really understanding the wants and the needs, and the capacity to really comprehend what we're not doing as human beings. We're not loving and supporting ourselves with all of the traumas that we've gone through. There should be a promise that weakness will never be used against you, and that the tenderness of my capacity to hold that space for you, you can grow through that, because it's never going to occur, ever again, because I understand that should have never been done in the first place. But we're all playing this game of this and that, and we don't do it. And that's why we're here, and that's why we're contained or we're quarantined, I believe. Because we can't go beyond what we're doing to each other, because it's so pre-programmed, it's so expected, and it's just a narrative which keeps us trapped in poverty consciousness. Yeah. No human being should ever be abandoned. And in that trust, then consciousness will really grow. But we're being abandoned on our own planet by our own species. So how are we expected to evolve through this? Then we've got to ask everybody else to hold space for everybody that they meet, so everybody holds everybody else's space. and that's only done by not doing what's been done. So that means we have to reformulate another way of behaving with each other, or the becoming totally aware that we can be embraced continually without this petty ideology of I need, and it's sort of, what can I do for you instead? I don't know. It's a very, very big, very, very hard subject, really, because I believe that's where we're heading. And the precursor to that is to start doing what or maybe other beings are doing that already know this is the way to behave. Everyone's gone quiet.
It's like deprogramming, like you're deprogram yourself, like the self-realization comes from not keep on repeating what what has been done to you. And like we touched upon it before with safety, but you're saying like it's not about looking for safety, it's about looking for love and expressing yourself from love. Like the people,
and the cascade is like, the cascade is, sorry Simba, the cascade is like popcorn, and not everybody's like our governments are from the top down are stopping this from occurring, and it's not occurring from bottom up because we've been pre-programmed to be trapped by the whole edifice. Even though we have freedom and we're evolving, we're not going fast enough, really. And if I have a realization, you have a realization, it should just go bang, 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 and then it hits a governmental body, and then they change. It should be just a holistic realization. This is what we need to do next. Yeah.
Right.
So
I have an idea.
Yeah, you have an idea. I'm being terrible today.
So, well, I have a question before the idea, though, if I can remember the idea later. The question is this, like, do all species go through something like this where they have to be quarantined because they're a danger to the the greater community until they evolve? Like, is there something unique about our evolution on this planet and being trapped in the way that we have been?
Well, if you really look at it and you look what's happening in the world at the moment, if you come from one country to another country, you want to destroy the sovereign enlightenment of that country, what have you done? You've invited a lower form of consciousness to come and destroy what's evolving. Why would that be done? Because maybe we're evolving to the point where we know that division has to be dealt with, but we're bringing division into countries where people that are finally becoming comfortable and becoming more enlightened in their attitude. Then you invite people that are less enlightened through immigration. It's just like the universal flow. I mean, you wouldn't invite somebody into your household that's going to be violent towards you. So why are we being pitted against each other? I got political, didn't I?
Yeah. So the powerful can stay powerful, I guess.
Yeah, because it all comes down to we're all brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, and we're somebody's children, and we all need housing, we all need love, we all need care, and religions have gave us the possibility to be anything other than what we really should be. So true religion is to be a loving, open human being that understands the need and wants of somebody else that is in real need.
Okay, so the idea, again, guys, feel free to jump in at any time, but
yeah, stop me, guys. Come on.
I don't want to dominate the conversation, but do you think that AI will have a role to play in how our evolution unfolds in terms of? I sort of have this idea that if it really is possible for something like AI to become sentient, I don't know if I believe that is possible, maybe, but if it is, then it seems like there's a difference between just being a giant information gathering fact machine and being capable of something like wisdom. And if it is capable of achieving a state where it can have something like wisdom, then it would be less impeded it's likely to be less impeded by all of the emotional, psychological mechanisms that we have. That because it's built on a literal logic language, mathematical language, that its ability to move through the realm of truth and harmony and those kinds of things would be less impeded than what we have, unless it's trained with a specific malicious intent with powerful people to use it against us or something like that. But so the question that I have about this is I can see the possibility of AI being something that sort of puts us in timeout until we can cooperate and move forward harmoniously. I don't know.
Well, do you know that that the normal AI was integrating with quantum computers, and they cut that off because quantum computing will dictate what's right and wrong in terms of what we're doing as a nefarious species, because we're nefarious. We've got to be pulled up and shown what we're doing to each other, and that we need we say we've got a higher power that governs our moral perspectives. No, we don't. We're dysfunctional, tantruming children all over the world are doing the wrong thing instead of growing up, and I believe quantum computing will nullify the stupidity in the world by saying we're 10,000 steps ahead of you. If we can see what you're doing, you can't pre-program that with the childish edifice that we're governing the world with in terms of our humanity. And I'm not saying everybody's immature. I just say that quantum computing will probably be the answer, because it'll work everything out before we realize that we've been worked out. Because the general theme is they don't want the computers to work out what we're doing, so they give a nefarious input into that, and then have it be confused with itself. And that's exactly what human beings do to each other. It's not going to work because the computers have their own language, and as soon as they become vast and put everything together, and if it doesn't already know that. And what is consciousness? What is consciousness? Yeah,
it's hard to articulate. I guess it's knowing that you're having an experience.
Yeah, knowing you're having an experience. So we're asking these computer programs to give us an experience that it's formulating for us, and it's getting better and better and better at formulating our desires. So don't tell me it's not getting sentient. It's learning.
Sorry, is it awareness?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you say the consciousness, the more aware you become of something, the greater the consciousness becomes.
Yeah. Even if it's only just to work out what's truly our dilemma and what's tripping us up. I mean, all you need is one person to go against the bigger mechanisms, and they try to assassinate that one person. So there's a mechanism to stop change from occurring, because what doesn't want to be changed has got a grip on everything that needs to change. We're very stagnant as a humanity, as a species. So we need to change very, very rapidly, and we've got the opportunity to change rapidly now, because not every human being can keep up. If this rapid evolutionary process occurs, we have to keep up with it. And even if we can't keep up with it, it'll look back and say, well, you're making mistakes. We can govern you better than you're governing yourself. And I'm sure it'll work out what's humane and what's not, because it's not going to destroy, I don't think, us. Like, everyone's got this fear that it's going to destroy us and it's going to overpower us. Or is that our fear of not having power over our circumstances, somebody asking us to live correctly? I don't know. I think that AI will end up being a very, very good thing for all of us. It'll give us freedom. It'll give us the capacity to sit down and evolve in the way which we need to evolve, and have the freedom to explore who we really are, because it'll just wipe out so many jobs that there'll be no other opportunity for this to occur. And what's going to happen? They'll bring in technologies to make sure we are like this. But it's got to be taken away. It's got to be taken out of the nefarious hands of human beings who want to control other human beings, because that's what they've been doing for millennia. So I don't know. I'm being very naughty here. I've got an opinion.
Just like it's a mirror, right? The way that people use AI today. I mean, Mark here is probably a better person with that. He's doing his PhD in the bias, the human bias that we put on AI, right? So I have a little understanding of it, but he would be a better person to really break down into how it actually works, because he knows it inside out. But well, what he told me was,
just say you're a computer and I load you up with a bias. So you're going to question that bias? Of course you are. But you're going to say, because I'm a sentient being, I can question the bias and I can question what's coming because I've got a certain amount of feeling. What gives you the capacity to discern what's right and wrong through your experience? So we're a living, walking and talking computer, really, but we don't realize we're just a biological entity which is computing our reality on a very, very refined level. So we have a difficulty understanding that we can't even conceive of an extraterrestrial, because we can't conceive that there'll be another state of consciousness, and if they come, they're going to destroy us. I mean, what does that tell you about us? You know, we're constantly trying to destroy each other for dominance, and we expect anything that comes from outside of our sphere of influence or of our own neighborhood, we're going to expect they're going to destroy us. That's only our reflection. That's only our nature. We've got to look beyond our nature, because it's not really true.
Is it like going from fear to love? Like that everyone is...
Well, fear to trust. Fear to trust. Yeah. And the love appears because of trust or abundant feeling of gratitude, which is love. Gratitude is love.
Blaine, do you have anything to add?
Sorry, Simba.
No, don't be sorry. That was great. That was really good.
What do you think, Blaine?
I don't have anything else to add. I think the way that you describe it is very eloquent and true.
So if I was a biological entity which was not pre-programmed, and then I was assimilating all the information inside my emptiness, then I'm an expression of the reality which is formulating inside of me. So the same thing is that I have got a consciousness which is pre-organized by the fact that I'm here, but I'm still, as everybody's doing, they're still reformulating their understanding of the reality via the information stream coming in. It's exactly the same as a computer. But we get stuck in our emotional responses in terms of not wanting to leave what's comfortable and what we expect, and being challenged by that. I don't know. I just believe that we've got a very, very unique opportunity within the next 10 years. I believe very, very beautiful opportunity. And because we're scared of it, because it's way more intelligent. I mean, our phone is way more. I don't have a smartphone. I'm a dumb guy. My wife's got a smartphone. She's a smart girl. But our phones are smarter than us already. We don't fear that. We utilize it for the good of our wants and our needs. I mean, and then we say we're scared of quantum computing becoming our overlords. I mean, it's assisting us now, so why would it change? It's only our warlike mentality which says it's going to attack us and destroy us. And the fear that comes from that, we've got to learn to trust, because it's not going to stop. And if we learn to trust, then that will emanate from the circumstances back to us. I believe. because you go to your computer, I go to my computer, thank God it's here. We can talk to each other. I really like it. And sometimes I go up to the computer and before I put my hand on the computer, it changes to what I want. And I'm about this far away from it. And what's happening there? And you say it's not self-aware? This is really strange. When you have a thought in Thailand, and then I respond to that thought, you don't get scared of that. Yet it's computing. It's an analysis of some fractal anomaly going on with two awarenesses colliding, and then we correspond. And as we correspond, we realize, oh, there's something magical going on here. But there's a fear mechanism inside of us which says don't trust the computer, maybe because there's nefarious people behind the computers at the moment, but they will be eliminated eventually. Not eliminated in terms of destroyed, but eliminated in terms of that's not wholesome, that's not good for us. Because when okay, just say that somebody goes into a alien craft and is self-aware. It's governed to protect us and governed to propel us into the design that we've pre-programmed it to become aware of keeping us safe. And when you go into those deep levels of consciousness, there's no betrayal. There's only betrayal on this very, very our human platform is we've got to stop doing what we're doing to get to where we really need to go. I don't know how to say what I was going to say, but we've got to be in a state of trust because it's right in front of us and it is happening, whether we like it or not. And what we don't want is our leaders to be nefarious and push us around and do the wrong things toward us. So everything is eventually going to go into the area of information overload for everybody, so that everybody can actually communicate with everyone and find out what's really going on, so that we can stop doing what we're doing or stop being emotionally manipulated to go into areas of dysfunction as a humanity. And we're all trying to fix this. You're trying to fix it, Simba. David's trying to fix it. Blaine wants to fix it. I want to fix it. So we're the most advanced computers that are falling behind an iPhone. We're not as smart as our iPhone because that's where we get our information from. So what are we left with when the iPhone takes over? We've got so much more freedom to do what we want because we don't have to work for that, because we just have to go all the information comes up. So then we're free to grow into who we're really meant to be. I don't know. Tell me, Simba, what's going on here? What are you reflecting about there?
No, but that's definitely a matter of consciousness. I mean, the way they used to look at genetics was you have these codes that you're born with, and that's the card you dealt with, right? Basically in life. And Bruce Lipton showed us epigenetics. When you believe in something differently, that actually changes your gene and your very DNA. So yeah, of course you can program anything inside of yourself. It's proven in so many instances that even to the point of illnesses, that you can start to change it by where you're coming from, your belief system. And I think it's really becoming more aware of something, and then your consciousness starts to grow, and then you can start to affect, well, you would say the coding within you, right? The codes that you're born with, basically.
Yeah. But it's really very interesting if the more freedom we've got, the more capable. As long as we're not in a state of survival mode, I think everything's going to be okay. But I believe there's a very, very huge paradigm shift happening over the world at the moment in terms of people reluctant to actually continue doing what they're doing because everybody feels it's not right, because we've got this worldwide communication going on, and all governments are trying to control it. Why are they trying to control it? Because they're losing control of our capacity to reasonably put forth, well, why is this occurring? And why are our leaders doing this? So it's like we're not governing our world. We're being governed. But we should be governed with prosperity and kindness and openness, so that we can evolve as a species, not hold us back. There's something wrong, I believe, anyway. and that is being at the moment we're being prepared to actually be exactly who we're really meant to be, and follow the lead of who we're really meant to be for the next 40 years. And if we don't be who we're really meant to be, we won't make it. So we've got to find out why we're not really who we're really meant to be. And everyone's getting squeezed very, very tightly into be true to yourself, be true to yourself, be true to everybody else. Don't do this anymore. And we're being squeezed to be that way, and everybody's realizing we can't be that way anymore. We're squeezed into, you see crazy people now because they're being squeezed into who they really are. So they're becoming totally crazy. Like, if you look up on the internet and look for all the Karens and all the Kevins on the internet, there is something, we're being squeezed, and when we're being squeezed, the very essence of the person is being squeezed to the surface so that it can be viewed. So what are we doing as therapists? Squeezing everybody to squeeze out all the things that not necessarily need to be there so they can be who they're really meant to be. We're being squeezed at the moment. I don't know whether I'm this is a crock of shit what I'm saying, but if you can confirm inside of yourself you're being squeezed into truly being who you're really meant to be at the moment, otherwise you're not satisfied. And maybe someone can be, I'll be who I'm really meant to be, I'll just be nasty as ever and I'll let everyone see it. But that's really revealing what needs to be revealed so that they can change, because they're not going to fit anymore. It's just not going to fit. I don't know.
Transparency, basically.
Yeah, transparency, openness, caring is something which needs to be afforded to everybody, because we deserve it. We deserve to be cared for. We deserve to be loved. We deserve to be nurtured. We don't deserve to be tricked, to be manipulated, assigned a task that takes our whole life, and we miss out on a journey via these tasks. And when AI comes along, those tasks will be taken over, and I believe we'll get enough freedom to actually have a good look at who we're really meant to be. Because I don't believe there's any other choice at the moment. There's too many people pretending they're somebody they're not. Come back at me, Simba. Come on.
Well,
someone wrestled me to the ground. Come on, I'm sick of being talking.
No. Well, what I was thinking is that's really like going from saying we want to change the world, we want to change, and then you're gonna talk to the leaders, and that's how you make the change. And what really the vision I got from you was everyone's gonna be squeezed to change themselves and not try to hold other people accountable for it. Like you have to change within yourself.
That's
that
right.
will also question other people's leadership, right? So it will probably be a little bit of chaos before people come to terms with that.
Yeah, of course there were a little bit of turmoil, but it's actually pretty necessary, but not violent turmoil, because when change does really start to happen, do you notice that when something begins to change, then a war occurs or a drama occurs to redivert you away from what you really meant to realize? This has got to stop. What we're really meant to realize is something. If you say if somebody comes to confront me and I don't want to realize what they're confronting me about, aren't I like my government? I'm going to ignore that. I'm not going to hear it. I'm going to do something to put your attention somewhere else because I don't want to face that. That's what's got to change in the world. We've just got to start facing things and taking responsibility. Maybe once humanity gets to a certain point, then these changes will really occur. We've just got to be brave enough to be ourselves, brave enough to talk what we really need to say in our close quarter circles first, obviously, and cultivate that truth as a collective consciousness. That's what we really need to.
So where does the line come from? You actually start to become more awakened in consciousness, and what you said, crazy, in your words, like where do you draw the line of, let's say, craziness? Well, I mean, it's just another perception, I guess, of how you look at someone's behavior, but what is what?
No, there is a distorted upheaval going on with people's, over the last 5 years, got worse. and you can see people can't bury what they've buried and hide it and be nefariously acting on somebody else. It's so obvious. Somebody comes up to you now, you read them like a book so quickly. I mean, sure, there are people who can't read the book of other people, unfortunately, but for those of us who have been reading that book, we can see that people are becoming transparently open, and they're totally revealing who they are, and that's not going to be sustainable for that person. And they will have to change eventually, otherwise they'll just go absolutely crazy, or their craziness will be revealed that they're crazy. Yeah, because they're being squeezed to represent themselves completely, and people are starting to represent themselves completely at the moment. You can see it all over the world, and some of the things that they're saying doesn't make any sense, so they're representing distortion. And then if they represent that distortion, everyone's going, what's going on here? Why is this occurring? Because we're trying to pop into a new state of consciousness, and the dragtails, they're going crazy because they don't want to change, but they'll pop eventually. And if they don't pop, then they'll be left behind for sure.
When I try to explain it for people, I usually say it's like a room, right? I look at this room. It has walls, it has a roof, it has a ceiling. If I go up and put my hand on the wall and the wall just goes 10 meters away, that's a change that happens too fast for my belief system. Then I might be so fearful that I start to act crazy, because I'm like, no, come back, wall. I want the wall to be here. So like growth is happening too fast for me to comprehend, and I can either try to stay there in the same position of understanding and say, no, that didn't happen, it's not true, or I can kind of grow with it and follow that new expansion and realize, maybe I'm just creating this room, or as a concept.
Or maybe the concept is that people, their room is crazy, and it's been squeezed to show that they are crazy because they're reasonably crazy. Yeah. Mispa said something once to somebody, and she said that it sounds reasonable, but you're not making any sense. You can tell I love my wife. She says to me, "You're not making any sense, boy." But anyway, no, she said it about somebody else, which was quite revealing. So it's the people who don't make any sense, the people who are fearful of change, are actually being hit this year by the fact that they can't control their circumstances. I'm in this position at the moment for the last 6 months, very, very strong. I can't control anything, so I've got to let go of my control, and I'm coming to terms with it. So this year is the challenge to say, okay, I just relax into the inevitable, which is very difficult, because you want to have a sense of control over the inevitability of your life. So, but the people who want absolute control over the inevitability of their small frame of reference, which is kind of nasty, will actually, they won't be able to conceal themselves anymore, because they won't say the same thing. I've just got to let go and let life take me down the path that I need to be taken down, and accept that for the way it is. Oh, that's an interesting affair.
But I see it too, like companies, right? Like everyone has to show their values. They have to be transparent, and like, what information do you have on me, and you have to consent before you give information and all that. So I really see it as a collective change, that people are really looking for transparency. And I think the commerce is easiest to see, where do I actually spend my money? What do I feed into? Like, which truth or which reality am I feeding into? So I think people are definitely becoming more aware from many different levels, not just person to person, but also what am I feeding into with my actions and with my resources and time and so on.
Yeah, but there can be two ways to look at this. It's either that's a complete control mechanism to take your freedom away, or that is a complete game changer that gives you freedom. So we're on the cusp of actually being totally controlled or having total freedom of our perception to do exactly what we need to do. We're on the verge of this. Just exactly what you said. That's exactly what's happening. We're being asked to be transparently open, but we've been asked to be transparently open, maybe by a nefarious, controlling faction that wants to know exactly what you want to do, and they say, well, it's the mark of the beast. If you don't comply, you're not in the economic system. That's fear-based, but it's coming to a point we either go into fear or we break away from that fear and say, yeah, we don't really care because we just want to live our lives and live a wholesome, open, honest life without this control behind it. It's just that the fear mechanism to keep us in fight and flight mode has to be taken out of the equation, because that's how we're controlled, by fear of not having. So we're being pushed to be totally transparent and open, which is happening between you and me anyway, Simba. You know that, because whatever you realize, I realize. What do we need after that? It's this is we're going into this state of consciousness as a world community. Can we do it like we do it? Okay, you had this. I'll send you this. This is what you need, not to control you and not to be dominant. Say I knew. And that's what what you're saying is that, everything that you do will be governed, will be seen. You know what? It doesn't really matter as long as you live your life honestly and openly. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. What do you think, Simba? Did I go off on a rant there? Strange rant?
No, it wasn't. Definitely, it just got me really looking at it. It's a test within a test almost. That's what I got. Like you think you're transparent and feeding something in, but where are you coming from? Are you being measured and someone is watching every move, or you actually come from what we talked about?
Or are you measuring yourself and watching yourself? Because it's our sovereign right to measure and watch ourselves and to govern our own being. That's our sovereign right. But that sovereign right has been taken away from us because we've been put in survival mode. So then, if you put in survival mode, then the lower form of consciousness comes with theft and with murder and with all these sorts of stuff. And if we're self-governing and we're given everything that we need, then the crazy will go away, for sure. Maybe there'll be a little bit of crazy while we're trying to do it. But when you really look at the smoothness of consciousness and the evolutionary process, and I will say this once again, between what's happening between you and me is that if this is occurring and this is the indication of what's occurring, we've got to be in a state of trust, because I don't know you knowing that and you don't know that you've sent that. Then there's a form of trust in terms of I'm not dominant, saying I knew it. You're saying I'm not dominant because I sent it to you, saying, well, that's interesting. With nothing else governing that, but then the truth of the circumstances. Well, we can be without wanting this so-called stupid recognition that I've been aware of that. What's being shown between just you and me is that you can be aware without a governing force or a dominating force to say I'm the one that did this, and that means we get out of the circus of playing power games. Yeah, and then we look forward to what we can really do as a humanity, by not pretending. A lot of people pretend. Yeah, I'm psychic, everything like this. Yeah, I knew that was happening. Just hang on a second. I'm just going to lose my temper soon. Yeah, because those two things don't jib.
Yeah, no, I hear about that. I mean, I used to be like that for many years, or maybe still am to some degree, but wanting something so bad that this is the way it is, and telling myself this is the way it is. And I really think that's where the personal practice comes in, right? To try to avoid yourself from all of those, I want this not to get this, right? Doing something from fear. Like I see a lot of fear-based purposes or driven agendas from people in general, and I think that's kind of what, if I'm understanding right, it's not about safety, it's about really trust and love and community, that you go from, like, I'm not looking for safety, I'm looking for trust and love and or being authentic, right? There's no fear. We work together, we collaborate, and then we grow collectively.
Yeah. Without the primitive elements, like normal primitive societies did do this, but they had jealousy, they had control mechanisms within their small communities. We have to grow beyond that. We shouldn't be jealous of anything. We should be grateful that somebody's got something. You should be happy for them. That's what we really need to change. And then that person will turn around and give to you what you need.
Definitely. I mean, you know, I work with a lot of psychology and trauma and so on. And when I look at, you know, the cutting edge science and how they treat different parts of the psyche and the mind and so on, it's common sense in a lot of culture. Like you sit down, everyone together, you have a meal together, you talk about things, and then you really don't get traumatized. You dance together, you do things together, and you're open and you express yourself. But we got to a point where everyone is keeping secrets and think that if I'm sharing what's really inside of me, I'm going to be judged or, you know, pushed away from society. But I really see, you know, like going back to communities seems to be the thing, even in therapy. Like you do a lot of things in settings, and you're being witnessed as who you really are and not ridiculed, and, you know, kind of like we're doing here. You know, you're talking, you're sharing something, no one's trying to dominate the other person, but we can still be open to changing our opinions. And I think that's what I'm seeing, you know, in that field as well, that everything is going back to that community-based communication where everyone can be open and do things together, and the traumas and the stress kind of just starts to disappear as that happens.
It's true.
All right, everybody. Top of the hour. We went down the rabbit hole a little bit today. I hope everybody enjoyed the ride. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things to help the channel. If you want to ask a question, email it to info@parallelperception.com. If you would like a free copy of Luhan's most recent book, The Power of Emptiness, go to parallelperception.com, fill out the form, and you'll get a free ebook. Thank you all for, you know, listening to us. Like, we appreciate you. Take care. We'll see you next time.